Hello there, one and all, and thank you very much for tuning in to episode 540 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, live on YouTube as always. Regardless of whether you're watching the live or you're watching the recording, you are very, very welcome. Before the comment disappears off my screen, first comment goes to Alex, who says, "Hello, Mr. P, and greetings to everyone from Graz. Scent of the day is the legendary Bala Versailles." You're not kidding, that is legendary. But do you have a sort of vintage version or more recent? Perfumed by the Sea says, afternoon, finally some sun here this weekend in Dorset. Yesterday I oversprayed Coromandel. You can't really overspray Coromandel, can you? And must apologise to the people of Poole. No, you don't need to. As someone near me said, it's very much in the air. Oh yes, thank you, Alex. Yeah, there isn't a too much Coromandel. No, I agree with Alex. Jeff is here too, so is Polpo, so is Frag Chi-Town, and so is Rita Repulso, who says, "Evening all." If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do consider doing so. You should also be able to see a link to my Ko-fi page in the video description below. And if you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment, ask a question at any time. Plan for today, for the benefit of those of you watching live, we're going to do two back-to-back videos. We're going to do this one, which is from last year, but newish to me, and then we're going to come back with a showcase, a whole brand showcase. We're going to try and get through 11 perfumes, one of my sort of Milan Essence discoveries. Ula says, "Hi everyone, can't stay but we'll catch up later. Scent of the day is Iris Poudre and I feel so chic." That is because you smell very, very chic and you are very chic. Sultan says, "Nice shirt, thank you very much." And Omar agrees. Okay. X-Sabi says, "This Tom Ford was a massive letdown in my case." Right, so that's the cue that we need to get going with it. I have got pre-sprayed blotters, except I decided to go for the sort of larger tissue paper style blotters because I think they just work a little bit better. But anyway, maybe we'll talk about that in the next video. This is from last year, credited to Guillaume Flavigny, although as you know, Tom Ford still don't officially acknowledge their perfumers, which I think is such a shame. Anyway, this is Black Lacquer from their private blend, which basically means it is horrifically expensive. And I feel I ought to review it because last year over on my Substack, and I think maybe not just on the Substack, did I talk about this on the video as well? I wrote well, I guess you'd have to call it a scathing review, but I stand by it completely, of one of Tom Ford's earlier releases from last year. And I think it was in that review that I said something along the lines of, every year for the last few years, Tom Ford would release lots of scents, but even though the number of scents was large, in every single year I could be sure to find at least one that I thought was praiseworthy. I must just pause to say thank you to Dry Martini. That's very, very kind. Thank you, Dry Martini. But last year I didn't really found one that I could kind of get on board with, and I think maybe the same happened the year before. I can't remember. But as this is from last year, and as I do think that actually overall it gets a thumbs up rather than a thumbs down, I thought in the interests of fairness we ought to review it. Helter Skelter Jones says, "This release felt like when an old band make a new album that tries to recapture the very thing that made them popular in the first place, and it just doesn't quite work like it used to." I get what you mean, and yes, and I think that's the question that I've still got in my head is, you know, does it work or not? Although I much prefer it to some of the other things that Tom Ford released last year. The only outstanding thing about it is the price, says Xavi, although not in a good way. I mean, it is very, very expensive. The 50ml bottle costs £290, and if you would like to have the 250ml bottle, that is just £5 shy of £700. You know, that is a lot of money. You would need it to be, you know, in the sort of best perfume ever made type strata. Killer says, "Do you have any scent you're wearing daily?" Oh, we'll get onto those sorts of things in another video maybe. Music Picnic says, "Off topic, but your daffodils are bringing much needed optimistic and hopeful energy." Well, I hope so. It's what is it? it's meteorological spring now, but it's not astronomical spring. And I tend to go with astronomical spring because that's the start of the solar calendar and Persian New Year. So we've got to wait until about 20th, 21st of March. Okay, so this is Tom Ford Black Lacquer. I had a fleeting encounter with it a few weeks ago. And I have to say, I was really, really taken with the opening because I thought the opening lived up to the name. Yeah. It is. Did you used to have this thing when you were children? I mean, I assume there are no children watching, even though if you are a child and you're watching, you're very, very welcome. But assuming that we're all adults and so we can look back at a time when we were children, did you have a thing where you were obsessed with the smell of nail varnish? Because I used to love the smell of nail varnish, and I was the kind of kid as well that liked the smell of petrol. I used to love it if we would, sort of be in the family car and we would go into a petrol station. I don't know why, but I think that... Did petrol smell more strongly of petrol in those days? I don't know. But I loved those sorts of smells. I loved the smell of nail varnish. Ralph says nail varnish remover especially. Rachel says I was obsessed with gasoline varnish, all of those. Nail varnish remover was a slightly different smell because, of course, a lot of them did have quite a lot of acetone in those days. I think so many are acetone free. Petrol smell is great, says Offenlicht. I also like the smell of spray paint. Yes, those sorts of things, and maybe to some extent hairspray. Anyway, that kind of nail varnish, oil-based paint, kind of borderline dangerous smell, that kind of vinyl-y sort of thing is... it has been captured so well in the opening of Black Lacquer. Really, really well. You kind of want that bit of the scent to last. It's the kind of thing that Comme des Garçons probably would have leapt on years ago. You remember when they had their synthetic series, and I think they did do one called Vinyl. I forget which of the... I've got two in my collection. I forget which of the two I've got. Maybe I need to dig those out. I've still got them in the original weird transparent sack, that kind of vacuum bag bottles, pumps, whatever they were. And that smell has been captured really well. Chemists out there or people with a greater knowledge of perfume chemistry, please feel free to tell me what those scents are. I'm assuming they're some sort of acetate, something or other acetate. There's a large dose of them in here, and that's the bit that makes Black Lacquer interesting. That's the bit that makes it stand out from the other Tom Fords that we've had for quite some time. But then it moves on and goes straight into, what was it, Helter Skelter Jones, was you that sent that, into more familiar, dare I say, more contrived, more cliched Tom Ford territory, because it basically starts becoming an attractive, well done, but certainly kind of, we've been here before type, resinous, frankincense-y, woody sort of scent. Let's see what the brand itself says about it. Jeff says, didn't Comme des Garçons do something like that with black? I can't remember. I got a little bit lost because didn't they had a black, they had two blacks, didn't they? And they also had a black pepper. Anyway, the brand says the fragrance shines with two exclusive innovations in modern perfumery: an incandescent black lacquer accord that captures a smoky dimensional opulence. Somebody explain to me what that means. And a Macassar, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, ebony wood note that evokes aspects of leather and birch. Beneath the glossy surface blooms the irrepressible mystery of a dark peony accord. Possibly. Black Lacquer is an amber woody fragrance premiering the exclusive notes of Black Lacquer and Macassar ebony wood, creations unique to Tom Ford. Beneath the glossy surface unfurls a dark peony accord. If you thought that maybe the second paragraph is kind of a repeat of the first, That's because it is. Rachel says, I've just ordered a sample of this scent, thank you. As in, before you started watching, or just because I was so persuasive? Music Picnic says, black heavy-duty borderline toxic markers were a favourite childhood. Yes, and markers don't smell like that any. I mean, we were probably all getting high on these things, weren't we? And I just wish that effect lasted a little bit longer, because that is what makes this curious. And so in the notes, they do again mention a black lacquer accord, a Makassar ebony wood scent trek, which I think is one of Givaudan's headspace technologies, a dark peony accord, a libanum essence, a vinyl accord, that's the interesting bit as well, and a Moroccan cedar wood. So if I just go to the pre-sprayed one, this was done a few hours ago. Helter Skelter says, I think it loses the initial strangely jarring quality in the quest of being wearable. Yes, maybe somebody thought, okay guys, this is a bit strange, we need to sort of tone down the weirdness a bit. Anyway, pre-sprayed. Really well done. Peppery, cedary incense. Kind of starts taking us into the territory of the much missed Tom Ford Sahara Noir. Do you remember that one? I think that was by Rodrigo Flores Roux. That was a great scent, but apparently it kind of died a death and didn't do very well, and they had to discontinue it. That's the kind of thing they should bring back as a private blend. That was a really, really interesting animalic incense, but it's taking us there. And it becomes the sort of thing, you know, for which you really, really don't need to pay £300, because a lot of brands are doing it for a lot less. You know, it's quite a sort of simplistic incense. You know, it's the kind of thing that maybe you might expect L'Occitane to do for about a quarter, or maybe you know, even a fifth of the price. There's nothing wrong with it per se, unless you consider a lack of originality to be wrong. It's such a shame that they didn't have the guts to keep that opening going, because the opening is really, really interesting, really remarkable. Xabi says, I really miss Plum Japonais and Japon Noir. I've still got my Plum Japonais, but I don't think I ever got to smell Japon Noir. More Violette says, I thoroughly enjoyed Sahara Noir, so wish I'd been able to buy a bottle before it was discontinued. I've still got some backups of that one. Frank Chaitan says, the concept perfume by UK indie band Rock Perfume called School has a smell that reminds me of markers. I need to smell that. And Sharon says, by the way, I loved your Substack post about Essence. Thank you very much. We might talk a little bit more about that in the next video. Anyway, Alex says, safe and expensive as so often these days. Yeah, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Okay, thank you very much for watching this one. We will let YouTube do its thing, and I will be back in a couple of minutes with a showcase of the entire output of Persolaise. Okay, see you in a bit. Bye now.